Hi, everybody. Welcome again to week 10 now. I'm going to talk about in the video today is, again, on the basis of some questions that have come up. And specifically what I'll be talking about is theme, how to play with theme within a piece, but in a specific way, which is via metaphor. Okay, so let's talk about these two ideas of theme and metaphor. And again, this isn't stuff that we cover in our lectures. So these are great when you are sending me questions because it lets me go a little bit beyond the curriculum as well. Okay, so theme these days is a tricky thing to manage, and particularly in a short story of the length that we're writing. To really write something that's thematic, that's carrying a theme, is a tricky thing. And so what do we mean by theme? By theme, probably what we're talking about is some kind of underlining idea that runs throughout a piece that's a commentary on the world in some kind of way, that perhaps is calling us to see the world in a different way. It's the meaning of the story that's sitting down deep. Now, a common piece of advice that you get actually about theme when it comes to creative writing that I think is a good piece of advice is that often your main plot, so your main through line in the piece, isn't where theme is held, but theme is actually developed in the subplots within a piece. And I think there's some truth to this, and that this is often a good way to think about writing a more complex piece of fiction, is where is the theme being held? And perhaps the theme is most fully being developed in the subplots rather than the main plots. Or at the very least, perhaps your main plot is looking at the theme of the piece in one way, whereas your subplots are being used to show other angles and to look at that issue through other lenses as well. You can hear my cat ripping the heck out of my couch in the background there, if you're wondering what that noise is. This is one of the things he's allowed to destroy. So that's how theme and plot and subplot, hey kitty cat, give him a little virtual pat there, plays out in longer pieces of writing. But of course, what we're talking about here is we're talking about smaller works. So we are talking about the short story and the short end of the short story here in terms of what we're writing. And so perhaps we don't have the luxury of subplots and complications and things like that to play with if we are trying to get a theme across. So one of the interesting ways that we can add resonance, that we can add depth, and that we can add meaning and theme to our piece is through the use of symbol and through the use of metaphor. Now, these are fantastically powerful tools that are at our disposal. Actually, I'd love to give a lecture entirely on symbol and metaphor for you. We do that in creative writing style and technique, but I don't have space for it in this unit, unfortunately. But what symbol and what metaphor does for us is these, they almost do what visual art does for us. Like, we can look at a work of visual art, we're taking it all in at once is one of the peculiarities of a piece of visual art, or say a photograph. Like, we can take in the entirety of it in just what our eyes can all see at once. Of course, whereas in a story, in a work of fiction, we're taking it in line by line. It's a sequential process that takes a fixed period of time to absorb and to experience the whole thing. Whereas with a photo or a painting, we see it and then we explore it. Then we allow our eyes to wander to whatever they're attracted to. We reflect on it, etc., etc. But all the information is there in front of us all at once. And symbols and metaphors can do this for us in fiction. So they're one of the ways which we can kind of break the prison of language. As storytellers, you and I are kind of confined by language and confined by the limitations of language. And symbol and metaphor allows us to transcend those things a little bit. You think we spend, if you're lucky, a third of your life in sleep and dreaming. And a very natural language that our mind has is this symbolic, metaphoric language of dreams. We actually spend a lot of our cognitive time in those spaces, even if we don't remember them when we wake up in the morning. And as such, we are really, really, really good at inferring a lot of information out of a symbolic construct. So if you give us a good symbol, if you give us a good metaphor, this is going to resonate much, much, much larger than just simply the words that have been devoted to it. A metaphor unfolds within us, and often unfolds within us in quite individual ways as well. So different readers will perhaps respond to a metaphor or a symbol or an image in different ways. And this is actually an incredibly powerful way to help a reader make a story their own as well. So ending on an image, ending on a metaphor, ending on a symbol is often quite a good instinct for a short story of this size, because again, these are open spaces of meaning that a reader will step in to inhabit. And of course, what we're doing when we create a metaphor is that we're taking one domain of knowledge and we're mapping it over the top of another domain. So if I was to say he was as agile as a cat, we're taking the idea of cat and overlaying it over the top of he, and giving, you know, the attributes and so on that we understand about cat to this person. So there's this conceptual mapping between what are technically called the source and the target domains that happen when a metaphor occurs, and symbol as well. And so it allows us to create these rich spaces of connotation, these rich spaces of imagination for us within a piece. And if what you find is in your first draft that a symbol or a metaphor has kind of naturally emerged from the piece, please pay attention to that as part of your drafting process. And perhaps what you can actually do in the redrafting is go through and make the story more seamlessly about that metaphor, leading up, leading into the metaphor, taking some of the central facets or central ideas or central images of the metaphor, and perhaps peppering them throughout as well, so that there's a feeling like the whole piece is about this in some kind of way, rather than the metaphor just popping up in one place. There's a lot that you can do with these non-literal, symbolic moments in a story that are about connotation rather than about being told, that we feel our way into rather than think our way into. And this is an incredibly powerful thing for you to be playing with in your own work. Okay, so that's some thoughts about theme and about particularly how to deliver theme through metaphor and symbol. And I hope maybe that's helped spark some ideas for you. Thanks very much. Please keep your questions coming, because I'll do one of these each week until we're finished this semester, which is only a couple of weeks away now. So we're in week 10. In week 11, we're going to have, instead of a traditional lecture, we're going to have a in conversation with a wonderful short story writer, a local short story writer called Laura Elvery, who's just had a brand new collection out and is very, very, very successful. And then in week 12, we're not going to have a lecture. We're just going to have our tutorials to bring us home for the semester. So that's where to from here as well. But I've got another 2 of these videos to do this semester, one in week 11 and one in week 12. So please ask me the questions that you'd most like to hear me answer, and I can do that for you before we wrap up. Okay, thanks very much.